Same process on the box. I did a couple things though. The first thing is I didn't really like the cardboard that I couldn't get rid of on the inside, so I just sprayed it with some black paint. And I also sprayed some poly on the inside again, just to protect the wood. You know, I want it broken, but I don't want it to like disintegrate. So I'm about to do the same thing. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to avoid the sound hole area. I'm just going to work the sides and around it, and then everywhere else. I think the sound hole's cool enough without any weakening of the grain structure. So I'm going to have at it. I'll show you it in a couple minutes. Interestingly enough, the must have been mostly hardwood on this surface, or this isn't real wood, but some sort of a laminate. Not a lot came out. I'm going to hit it with a file and gouges. The sides did ding up. The bottom had, where I sanded away the flocking, and it still had like a thin layer of paper. So I hacked at it. No one's going to really see it. But yeah, the sides got some nice gouges. So I'll move on to the next process after I do some damage to this. I just finished adding more scratches and nicks all around. One of the things that occurred to me is a couple days ago I watched a video of the guy at StewMac who annually repairs Willie Nelson's guitar and tries to save all the dings and bangs and the extra sound hole. So one of the things that occurred to me is I wanted to envision what 50 years of picking over this area would be. So I gouged it. I went in different directions. I hit it with a screwdriver. We're gonna do it again right now. Just put up more random gouges in it. Kind of elbow grease with the drill. So hopefully this will just kind of be emphasized in the final product. So this is the part of our program where the going gets weird and the weird get going. This is the totally random part of the first part of this process. So this is where I'm going to apply some natural homegrown chemicals. Don't be afraid of the word chemicals. Everything is chemicals. We are chemicals. But I'm going to apply a couple of different things here, and we're going to get a totally random staining process on it. So the first chemical in this weird looking jar is tannic acid. Actually, technically it's iced tea. It's actually moldy iced tea. Basically, a couple weeks ago when I finished a little pot of iced tea, sun tea, I poured the little dregs off into a jar, and the jar kind of got moldy because I didn't refrigerate it, but it's basically tea water, tannin. And this other even uglier jar is a naturally made stain, and I can't remember the technical name. I'll look it up and I'll say it in one of the other segments. But it is basically an acid-based stain, and it is simply vinegar and metal that have soaked together for a period of weeks. If you go online, a lot of people do it by taking Brillo pads and tin foil and throwing it in a jar with vinegar for a few days to several weeks. Some people use rusty nails. In my case, this is actually about 3 weeks old, and there's an actual chunk of rust right in there. It's rusty tools. About 3 years ago, I lost my the apartment I was living in a home fire. The building caught fire. I had actually a couple of toolboxes of amazing woodworking tools that my father had left me. My father died in his 80s, so the tools could have been upwards of 100 years old. A lot of them just fused together. They were all in the basement, so all the fire water went into the basement of the apartment building and everything rusted together. I threw out, it was sad, I threw out stuff that just couldn't be rescued, including a couple of spoke shaves that, God, I wish I did. The rest of it I threw into a couple of the surviving toolboxes and left it up until about a month ago. Anyway, basically this bottle is vinegar and the rusty tools that have sat in a bucket for about 3 weeks. I'm going to let the tools sit for another week and then get at them with the wire brush. Supposedly that'll save the rust, but this is basically the chemical composition that I will say properly at another time after I look it up. But it's a pretty well-known natural stain, but it works with the tannins naturally in the wood. But I'm going to add some tannins to the grain. Hopefully it'll build up, and then the next step will be to wipe it with a light coat of the vinegar stain. I'm actually going to dilute the vinegar stain because, and I'm trying to find the piece of wood before I lose memory. I had a little demo piece here, and the straight on vinegar iron turned the wood brown like any walnut or dark brown stain. So I kind of want to randomize it, so I did an experiment and diluted it, basically 4 parts water to 1 part of the vinegar stain, and got a lighter effect. So I have this little sponge, and all I'm going to do is touch it into the moldy tea water, and I am just going to apply it randomly across both sides of the wood. You know, I'm going to hit some areas, I'm going to let it flow heavily, I'm going to tap it in some areas. So as you can see, that's what I'm doing. They're working across the street, but I'm going to really quickly do the same thing that I did with the body with the box. So first thing is I just have it on a sponge. I'm just going to randomly squeeze. There's no rhyme or reason to this. Just trying to get some places heavy, some places light, into the crevices maybe. All this stuff is just going to react with the vinegar. So I'm kind of getting it into the cracks a bit, making sure, working it roughly, and I'm squeezing some of it out so that it's not all the same, and some of it I'm dabbing, and some I'm brushing on. Just kind of doing this, getting it in cracks and crevices, patted, gonna flip it over, kind of do the same thing, just hit it randomly, depth, push in to give it some, wipe on the others, dropping it, kind of be cool. But yeah, you get the idea. I'm just randomly applying it, kind of pushing it in to deep cracks. So that's what I'm doing now. So it's been, I don't know, a half hour or 45 minutes. It's almost 90 here in the Detroit area, so the tannin layer is kind of already dried. So I'm going to do the next part. This is a part that it's not immediately apparent. It actually takes a while for the staining effect to occur. So this is 4 parts water to 1 part of the vinegar solution, the vinegar rust solution. And it's just a cheap chip brush, and I'm just gonna brush it, and I'm just gonna go across. As you can see, it kind of is a wet brown. It turns an interesting gray, which I really like, and I'd love to have that as a layer on here. So I'm just gonna do this real quick, let it dry, and show you the effect. I'm hitting the box as well, and I'm making sure right now to get a lot of it in these cracks, because that would be where, you know, where an age would go in. So I'm just brushing it across, kind of daubing and brushing and wedging, and no particular ordery thing. I'm trying to do a lot here, and we'll just see what the effect it has on the wood. Quick shot of the box while it is wet. I actually ran out of the undiluted mix mixed a little more of it. And then I should say diluted mix, and then I took some of the undiluted and splotched it over in different areas. So it's going to get different, it's going to have different effect. Here's the back, which has a lot of the undiluted. So we'll see over the course of the next hour or so, especially sitting in the sun, it's gonna have a chemical reaction. Alright, so this is the part that I've been really scared about, and I've mentioned a couple times. Because honestly, at this point, I could leave the guitar like this, and I think it'd be gorgeous with that old age look. But I want to talk about going a step further and adding another little woodworker's trick that I saw. I'm going to cover this with paint. So what I'm using, and it's sort of the inspiration for this project, is this bluish gray that actually my neighbors used to paint their house. Reminds me a lot of the color Haint blue. If you live down south, you're familiar with this. The idea is that Haints, haunted creatures, you know, nasties that go bump in the night, don't like that color because it reminds them of daylight sky. So they would basically paint the interior ceilings by their doors, and I guess in like the lobby area where they walk in, with the color. And that would ward them off because they wouldn't want to cross it because it reminds them of daylight. So basically I'm going to give I'm going to give the Giddy some paint, and as you notice, I've left the blue mark where the bridge is going to be, because it doesn't matter, that's going to be covered by a bridge cover. So I am just going to hit this with paint. I'm going to kind of do it a little heavier, so I'm going to kind of go off camera and then do it, but I'm going to touch it up. And then the final part of that will be, I'll take my sander and I'll sand it back and knock back most of it and just leave a little bit in certain parts. So I'll cut back when I've covered it. Alright, so I'm totally scared now. We're losing daylight, so it's hard to tell. But I have kind of blue-grayed it with some of this Haint blue, gray, whatever paint. Like I said, I put it on fairly heavy, but left spots. I'm about to show in the back. You get the idea. And up and down the back. I guess I can show the back. The back's a little lighter, and then up the neck to the back. So I'm gonna let it dry overnight, and then tomorrow I'm gonna take probably a fine grit on my rotary sander, and I'm going to knock it back a lot. So I pushed it into some deep crevices, but I didn't push it in all. And afterwards, I'm going to go over it one final time before I start sealing it with a wash, sort of black and brown washes, just to give it some dirt and grit and age. But you get the idea. Like I said, I may have ruined my guitar, or it'll just turn out cool.